Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Flex seminar on testing in Canvas. Everyone's favorite topic. Well, maybe not, but it's a necessary evil, right? And best if it were to be done, best it were done correctly or effectively, anyway. Today we're going to talk. Oh, I'm Dave Giberson. I think I know most of you, but I'm an old instructional designer from Online Learning Pathways, come back to help out with these professional development seminars. And as I said, today we're going to be talking about testing in Canvas. We're going to look at both of the testing engines in Canvas, classic quizzes and so-called new quizzes. Classic quizzes, of course, are the current quizzes, the current quizzing engine, the default testing environment. If you don't do anything out of the ordinary, you are using classic quizzes. And we've been using them for quite a while. They're very stable, reliable. Canvas has very few issues with testing, with students not being able to access tests or submit them or anything. The interface is getting a little dated as a result. It's been around for quite some time. And there are some desirable features that people have been wanting for a long time that are not available in classic quizzes. We'll look at some of those today and some of the things that have been added to new quizzes, which is Canvas's designated replacement for the testing engine in Canvas. We expect that at some point they will force us to use classic quizzes or new quizzes, and they'll retire classic quizzes, but that's probably not going to happen until the summer of 2024. So we've got some time. It is a more modern interface. That's in the eye of the beholder to a certain extent, so that's not that big a deal. But it does have some nice new features, and it's very usable now. Classic quizzes new quizzes are quite functional. We have lots of people using them. They're quite reliable. It's safe to use it with students. You can even mix classic and new quizzes in the same course. They don't look that different to the students. So the students are really probably not going to know whether they're taking a classic quiz or a new quiz unless they're extremely perceptive. And it shouldn't confuse them. So it's a great new feature or a new capability to have in Canvas. But let's go back and talk about the classic Canvas testing engine right now, because the purpose of this seminar is to give the basic functionality or demonstrate the basic functionality of both classic quizzes and new quizzes. Well, classic quizzes can be taken online from computers or mobile devices. They work very well on both, so those students who are accessing your Canvas course using a smartphone will be able to take a classic quiz or a new quiz quite well. You can control test duration and many other options as governing how the test operates and how much time people have to take it, how many times they can take it, things like that. There are quite a few different question types that you can use in classic quizzes, both objective and subjective questions. Canvas will grade the objective questions for you. Isn't that nice? No more Scantron sheets. Subjective questions we still have to grade, but when Canvas gets to the point it can do that, they may not need us anymore. You can insert media of all sorts into both test questions and even into possible answers. So you can make quizzes in Canvas. And by the way, Canvas uses the term quiz to refer to anything from a 2-question pop quiz to a 100-question final exam. They're all quizzes in Canvas parlance. But you can create quizzes in Canvas that you could never give on paper, because you can include all sorts of media, audio and video and still images that would be difficult, if not impossible, to include in a paper test. And you can do just about any, you can administer just about any type of test online through the classic quizzing engine that you can do in class, and many that you can't do in class with on paper. Rather than jumping right in to creating quizzes in classic quizzes in Canvas, we're going to talk a little bit about question banks first, because I want to be able to use those, show you those in creating quizzes in Canvas. So it's a chicken and egg thing. I'm going to try going with the egg first here. First thing we'll look at is how to import and create Canvas question banks. To do that, we'll need to go to Canvas. So let me pull up Canvas here. Got that open somewhere. All right, we've got a little sandbox course here that we're going to use today. We can create quizzes in this and anything else we like. If you are fortunate enough to be given a selection of question banks by your publisher, or perhaps by a colleague who has created some of their own, you can import those question banks into your course very easily by going to the Settings link in your course menu, down here, the bottom link. And let's see, I need to make this a little bigger, don't I? There we go. One jump there will do it. Or a little smaller, I should say. And on your settings page in your Canvas course is an option to import course content. You use this option on the settings page to do everything from copying an entire course from one, or the content of a course from one shell to another, to importing test banks. If we click Import Course Content, we're asked to import course content type. If you have been given a file from a publisher that contains one or more question banks, it will be, in all probability, what's called a QTI zip file. It will have the zip extension on it. It'll be a compressed file that the publisher provides to you, probably by a download link on a website that they maintain, or they may give it to you on a DVD, or email it to you, or whatever. But the the Canvas question banks are in QTI.zip format. Same format that's used in some other learning management systems like Blackboard. So chances are pretty good, if you have an old Blackboard question bank, that it will import into Canvas and will work. But you can always try, and it won't hurt anything. You just select the QTI.zip option and you choose the file that contains the question bank. And I don't happen to have any of those, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. But if you have those files on your local computer, you just find them. Tell Canvas which file you want to import, and click Import, and that's all there is to it. There's not much to importing a question bank. We're going to start with the other possibility, however, that you don't have question banks provided by a publisher or by a colleague that you can just import. But let's say you want to create a question bank and drop your questions that you've used, that you've written, that you have on old quizzes or whatever, and that you want to get those into Canvas so you can select them and reuse them in Canvas Classic quizzes. to do that, to get started with that, we have to go to the quizzes link in the Canvas course menu. And on some of these screens in Canvas, you'll find a little double secret menu up in the upper right-hand corner that's unlabeled. You don't even see it unless you're looking for it, but it'll typically be a rectangle like this with 3 vertical dots in it, which denotes a menu of some sort. If you click on that in the quizzes page on Canvas, you get an option to manage question banks. So if you click that, you'll see any question banks that you might already have in the course. I've got a couple here that we'll be playing with today. But if you want to create a new question bank, there is an Add Question Bank button. You're asked to give the question bank a name. It starts out by default with no name. So we'll just call this New Question Bank. Not feeling particularly original this afternoon. And press enter, and that creates the bank. It's an empty question bank. You can now just click on the name of the bank to open it up. And now you have the option to add questions to the bank. If you check that, you bring up the Canvas question editor, test question editor, or quiz question editor. This is the same question editor that we'll see when we're creating quizzes from scratch rather than creating question banks from scratch. It's the same question editor. You're given the opportunity to name a question. You don't have to do that because you can just search for the question using the information that you enter, the actual text of the question that you enter if you need to. Just here at the top, we have a drop-down menu which shows us all of the different question types that we can use in classic quizzes in Canvas, with multiple choice being the first one, since that's still the most common objective question type in the world. But we have the option to use true, false, fill in the blank. Fill in the blank questions on Canvas or any learning management system are a little bit of a challenge because you type in you can type in an answer for the question, and then the system will automatically grade the question for you. But if the student misspells the answer by one letter or perhaps uses a synonym or something like that for the word that you are looking for, Canvas will mark it wrong. I'm not a fan of fill in the blank or fill in the multiple blank questions on learning management systems. New Quizzes does handle this a little better than classic quizzes. You can have the multiple answer questions. Probably the most effective objective question type there is. Basically a multiple choice question where there can be more than one right answer. Students are not fond of multiple answer questions, but they do really test knowledge a lot better than multiple guess. So Canvas gives you this option. Multiple drop downs is basically just similar to multiple choice. Matching questions, questions that require a numerical answer, questions that require the students to manipulate a formula. Classic subjective question type is an essay question. You can ask an essay question on a Canvas quiz quite effectively. Related to that is the so-called file upload question, which is like an essay question, except the student gets to create the question or type the answer to the question offline in, say, Word, and then upload the resulting file to the test. And that can be easier for them and more reliable because typing large blocks of text live online into a Canvas quiz can cause certain types of problems. Notably, the problem where a student reads the essay question and stares at it until beads of blood break out on their forehead, and it takes them a while to get to the point where they feel comfortable in typing it. And by that time, Canvas may have thought that they had just switched off and left and are no longer in the test, and it can and it doesn't tell them that. They can go, and once they finally start typing, they can type out the entire answer and then hit submit, and Canvas says, huh, I thought you were gone. I just closed out the test. You just spent all that time typing for nothing. So file upload questions are a little bit more reliable if you expect the answer to the essay to require more than, say, a brief paragraph to answer it. And text no question just refers to a text header that's in the middle of the test. Something like, the next 3 questions are all related to the following diagram or something like that. You give them the diagram, and then they look at that, and then they answer the next 3 questions. So it gives them gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of, or if there's separate sections to the test, and you say, here's the multiple choice section, and here's the essay section, and so on, you can enter text headers into the test that don't actually constitute questions, but that give the students information that they need to answer subsequent questions. So
Dave,
those
I have a
Go for
question
it.
about that.
Yes,
The example you were giving about timing out.
yes.
Because I have students, they'll stay on for an hour and it doesn't seem to do that. Do you know what the rule is with
Well,
Canvas?
it only does that if they are inactive.
Yeah,
If they're not
okay,
moving from question to question,
right.
and
But,
Canvas,
uh-huh, okay. So you don't know how long the inactive time is?
it varies.
Okay,
It depends.
thank you. Yeah,
15 minutes is safe.
oh, okay,
Longer than that,
yeah,
if you expect it to take them longer than 15 to 20 minutes to type the answer, it would be better to use a file upload question.
okay, that's really
Because they
good to
can
know.
they can type it offline and then upload the Word file or whatever word
Yeah,
processing file that they're using, and it's just safer for them.
okay, great,
We
thanks.
don't often, I don't often, we used to have that problem all the time with Blackboard. It's
Hmm,
it happens much less frequently with Canvas,
hmm,
but
mhm.
it's still enough of an issue that they do provide you with this file upload question type. Also, if you're having students generate like an Excel spreadsheet or an AutoCAD drawing or something like that that they could not generate using the Canvas rich content editor, then that would be another reason to use the file upload question. And you could make something like that a part of a test. And the advantage to doing it with a test, instead of having them just submit the file to a homework assignment, is that on a test, you can set a time limit. You can force them to
Yeah, yeah,
create something within a finite time, whereas you can't with an assignment. So file upload questions are probably more commonly used for timed writing assignments than anything else. It's about the only way you can implement a timed writing assignment on Canvas or any learning management system. Great questions. Okay, so let's just say we're going to do a multiple choice question here. And I have somewhere here some boilerplate I'm going to use so you don't have to watch me type, which is a terrible thing to have to do. Let's do a multiple choice question since that's the most common thing. The first thing we're asked to enter is the question text. The question itself. Oh, let's see. Here we go. on an American history theme today because I happen to have a couple of question banks for that. This American president was hero of the Battle of New Orleans, was instrumental in the Native American removal resulting in the Trail of Tears, and was the first Westerner to break the dominance of the Eastern elites. And then we have possible answers to enter. And the answers I've got here are, and I just type them in or paste them in. If I have questions already typed out in a Word document, I can just copy and paste from the Word document into the question editor in Canvas. Second option might be the one that no one remembers. Not much went on during John Tyler's administration, or James Polk, or Andrew Jackson. Canvas, of course, doesn't know the answer. You've got to tell it which is the right answer. Anybody want to take a shot? No, I wouldn't either. It's Andrew Jackson. Okay, to tell Canvas that, I use this column right here where you see this green arrow up at the top, and the correct answer is just by clicking down here opposite Andrew Jackson. That marks that as the correct answer. That's how Canvas is able to grade this question. I can also provide, if I like, general comments for each answer in turn. So you can give feedback. If they pick an answer, if like they pick James Polk, you could say, well, he's a Westerner, all right, or what passed for a Westerner at that time. He was from Tennessee. But he didn't have anything to do with the Battle of New Orleans or the Trail of Tears. So, you get a little bit of something there. Jackson, you could provide a little bit of his biography, and so on. You also have optional feedback boxes to enter comments for a correct answer, like, great, or for an incorrect answer. Like, well, that, you might want to go back and look at page 78 in the textbook, and the answer is there. This is feedback they only see after they submit the test, of course. But you can provide all sorts of question-based feedback, including general comments on the question overall. Like this was covered in chapter 13 or whatever. So you can provide an awful lot of feedback to students. Oh, and if I click on one of these, I just get a little text box that I can type into. They all operate about the same. This is a great technique. It allows you to make each test question a learning object, a teaching opportunity in itself, converting the test from mere assessment to instruction, an instructional object. But it takes an awful lot of time to put those in. I'd like to tell you that I did that on all my questions. Wrong. Okay, so that's all there is to creating a question, in this case specifically a multiple choice question, in Canvas. You type in the question, you type in the possible answers, you tell Canvas which one is right, and you update, and you don't forget to update the question. Ask me how I know that. You can spend a lot of time writing a question, forget to hit update, and then it doesn't save it, and you go on. All right, so there's a multiple choice question. That's all we're gonna do there. The others are entered in the same way. So that's how we create question banks. All right. Yeah, nothing more we need to do right then. We've just learned how to add a question. There is something that you can do in Canvas. It's a little bit of an off-label action, but it works like a charm. You can create or convert a quiz that you've already created, a quiz perhaps from a previous semester or earlier in the course or whatever, and convert that into a question bank so that you can reuse those questions in later tests. Like if you give a series of chapter tests during the semester and you want to be able to draw from the questions on those tests in creating your final exam, you can do that. It does involve a little bit of a process. So let's take a look at that. Let's go. We're going to need a quiz. I don't have any quizzes right now. But let's say I have some quizzes in some earlier course shells that I'd like to use here. Well, it's quite easy to import those quizzes into this shell, even if I didn't think to do that when I copied everything else over. I can go to do that. I go to, again, to settings. We spend a lot of time in the settings page here. And once again, to import course content. And if I have those quizzes in another shell on SDCCD's Canvas system, I can just, under content type here, select copy a Canvas course. I do have to tell Canvas which course to copy from. Let's see here. Let me find one. Whoop. I'll take this sandbox course here. And instead of copying all content, as I might do if I were copying, say, the content from a development shell into a teaching shell just before the beginning of the term, where I wanted to take everything, I can specify select specific content. A little bit more about new quizzes here in a minute. But all I need to do now is make those two, tell it which course I'm copying from, tell it I want to copy only some of the content from that course, and click import. That sets up a job, a copy job, and it gives me a button that says select content. I click on that, and this is content in the source course, the one that New Quizzes Sandbox that I'm copying from. And there are, whoops, there's only one quiz in there, really? Okay. We'll take that one. I can select any quiz or a group of quizzes that I want to copy. And then click this button in the lower right-hand corner that I'm sitting in front of that says Select Content, and it actually runs the copy. Won't take long. It queues the process up. These are background processes. They're the last things that the system does when it's got time left over from more immediate tasks, but usually it only takes a few seconds anyway for something that minor. So now I have copied a quiz, I think. Let's find out. My quizzes in a Canvas course live under the quizzes tool, the quizzes link in the course menu. And there it is. I've got a 25-point U.S. history quiz, chapter 1. All right, how can I convert that into a question bank? I can't reuse these questions from a quiz in Canvas. We used to be able to do that in Blackboard. You could reuse questions from old quizzes as well as from question banks. But in Canvas, that's not true. In order to reuse these questions in a future quiz, in classic quizzes in Canvas, I have to convert this to a question bank. And it's not a one-step process, unfortunately. First thing we have to do is export this quiz from Canvas into that qti.zip file that we talked about. I do that by going to the settings link in the course menu again, and just below where it says import course content, there's an export course content button that allows you to export all or part of the content from your course into a file that you can download and use later in another course. If I select that option, I have the option to either export the content of the entire course. And by the way, this only exports content. It won't export student enrollments. It won't export grades. It won't export student submissions or anything like that, just content. But we also have the option to export one or more quizzes, which is what we want to do right now. And there's only one quiz in this course, so it's all of them. But I don't have to. I can export all quizzes. I can export a single quiz or any selection of quizzes I like into this export file. So I just create the export by clicking on this button here. Usually doesn't take very long. You get a little progress bar that tells you when it's done. If it's taking forever, you don't have to sit here and watch this. You can leave and go do something else and come back later, and you'll find the quizzes exported. And you'll see this link up above the blue bar that says New Export. That tells you the last quiz or the last thing you exported for the course is now ready to download. You just click that link in order to do the download, and you have to pick a place to save it. I want to use my downloads folder here, and let's see, I probably have a folder for Canvas quiz downloads. There it is, Canvas quiz exports. But I could make that folder here on Windows anyway. It's true with the Finder and the Mac as well, but the interface looks different, of course. I can make a new folder for this, but I've already got one, so I'm just going to open up Canvas quiz exports, and notice that the file name here by default tells me what course I exported this from. Testing in Canvas Sandbox is the course so that helps me identify this export and distinguish it from others that I might already have in this folder if I didn't make it a folder all to itself. So I just save that file, and it's available on my hard drive. So how do I make that quiz into a question bank? Well, I'm going to have to do something that appears illogical. Basically, I have to lie to Canvas. I go back to the settings link in the course menu, and I go straight to import course content. So what I'm having to do here is export the quiz and then import the same quiz back into the same course, which seems like it ought to confuse the living daylights out of Canvas. But it doesn't. And I'll show you what it does do. If I import course content, again, every time I use this, I have to think, well, what kind of thing and what am I doing? What am I importing? Well, I am importing, and I just have to know this in this case, a qti.zip file. When you export that quiz from a Canvas course, it is exported as a qti.zip file. So you select that as the option. You choose the file that you wish to import by clicking that button and navigating to that folder we just used. And there it is, the tutorial sandbox quiz. That's Oh, no, that's not it. It's this one, Testing in Canvas Sandbox. Thank goodness, because that one was done today. And I just select that one and click Open. And that tells Canvas which file I want to import. I don't have to worry about default question banks or whatever, and we're not dealing with new quizzes yet, so I'll just import that. And it's a very similar process. Doesn't take very long. Now, if I go to the quizzes link in my course menu, suddenly I have 2 copies of this U.S. history quiz. And that, well, of course you do, silly. You just imported the same quiz that you just exported. But you have more than that. If you go to the double secret menu up here and select Manage Question Banks, I also have, I have another, I've done this before already. I have another copy of this U.S. History Quiz Chapter 1 as a question bank. So I can reuse these questions. And I can just go back to avoid confusion, which gets to be more and more a problem for me every year. And these 2 are identical, so I can just delete one of them so I don't have an extra copy of one of them. So that's how you convert a quiz in Canvas to a classic quiz in Canvas to a classic question bank, so that you can use the questions later in future quizzes. All right, let's see where we are in PowerPoint here. I do these PowerPoint slides so I don't forget something, but I do. Do I still have that? No, I don't still have that on the clipboard. I did not put that in the link, did I? Let me go back and pull up. Do I have to do that every time? I guess I do. Copy the link. Okay. I'm going to put the link here in the chat tool. The link to this PowerPoint slide deck. And there it is in the chat tool. If you want a copy of this, just click on that link and save it. All right. So much for classic question banks. Now let's talk about creating classic Canvas quizzes. It's a lot of the same. We'll start by telling Canvas how we expect the quiz to operate. So let's see how we do that. We'll pull up quizzes here. And one place, at least in Canvas, where you can create a quiz is under the Quizzes tool, which you get to by clicking the Quizzes link in the course menu. And then you're given an Add Quiz or Plus Quiz button here in the upper right that allows you to create new quizzes, or create classic quizzes in this case. Since I have enabled new quizzes in this course, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a future slide, and that slide will prevent me from forgetting that, I am able to choose what kind of quiz I want to create, either a classic quiz or a new quiz. In this case, we're studying classic quizzes, so I'll select Classic Quizzes and click Submit. And that takes me to the quiz creation pages in Classic Quizzes in Canvas. And the first thing I notice is that I have 2 tabs at the top of the screen here. One labeled Details and one labeled Questions. So we're going to do those in 2 different steps. Let's start with details. What do we mean by quiz details? Well, these are options that you get to set for quiz behavior and quiz function. Starting, of course, with the name of the quiz. We're going to call this Classic Quiz 1. Call it Fred if we want to. And then we get some instructions, the opportunity to provide instructions. You may not need to. I mean, you figure the students probably know that you expect them to answer the questions, right? But you could put something like this. Or this is something I used to put on the top of my quizzes all the time because of the abuse that I took as an undergraduate. Remember that? You know, when if you missed a question, not only did you lose the points for that question, but son of a gun took a couple of questions off for guessing and wasting his time in having to grade it an incorrect answer. We all had some hard people in our instructional past, so you may or may not need instructions. Then there's some options that you have we need to take a look at. First off is quiz type. There's a drop-down menu here, and the default is graded quiz. I mean, that's what you're going to do 99% of the time, right? But it could be a practice quiz. Canvas allows you to create quizzes that won't count, that don't even show up in the grade book, that won't affect the student's grade in any way. It just gives them a chance to maybe practice on a test on the subject matter that they're going to be tested on for real here in another few days. I used to like to, my first teaching job was at a residential women's college, which had sororities. And the sororities all had test files on everyone, including me. You know, you give that quiz back, that paper test back, it went into a file at Tridelt. And the sorority sisters had a bit of an advantage then. They had my old tests. So I didn't like to see some people have an unfair advantage. So I would run off last semester's test and give it out a week before the test so that people would have to study by. Also kept me honest and made me refresh my tests every time. I couldn't just use the same test over and over again. I didn't give a lot of objective tests. I'm a chemist by training, so most of my tests involved having to solve a problem or write something out and so on. So that wasn't as tedious for me as it would have otherwise been. But you could use this practice quiz for that. You could give students last semester's quiz to look at and to take. And typically with a practice test, you let them take it over and over and over again. It's like preparing for the driver's test or whatever online. And it enhances learning and test scores later on when they get tested for real. But usually we'll be selecting graded quiz. The classic testing engine also allows you to create surveys. Though I've never quite figured out what a graded survey is. I guess you can grade them on whether they took the survey or not. But you can do anonymous surveys using the classic quizzes testing engine. But as I say, 99% of the time you're creating a graded quiz. I'm not going to worry about assignment groups here today. That's the subject, a subject of another seminar. First option you have is shuffle answers. This refers to questions with possible answers, like multiple choice questions, multiple answer questions, matching questions, things like that. This fixes it so that each student gets the possible answers in a different order, or they're in a random order, so not everyone gets them in the same order anyway. Sounds like a great idea until you run up against a question where answer D is all of the above. And if that shows up in the first position, well, that's not so good. So you got to be a little careful using this option.
You can just say all of these or
Yeah, you could say all of the questions, all of the
yeah.
available questions. Yeah, you have to, but there are other times when you may say something like the first answer and the third answer, but not the second answer and things like that. But if you're not using questions like that, shuffling answers is not going to be a problem. It does prevent them from calling one another and saying, well, what's the answer to question two? And somebody says the third answer. Well, it may not be the right answer for everyone. So it's a slight increase in test security. And of course, we're always concerned about that with online testing. Obviously, the opportunities for academic dishonesty in online testing are enhanced relative to the classroom and taking a test on paper. Though, in my experience, not that much, because I have been cheated on by brilliant experts. Probably you have too at one time or another. Even with me standing there and staring at them and walking around the room and standing behind them and all this, I still was never able to completely shut that off. So I don't think this is that big an improvement in test security, this particular option, but it can be useful. It's available to you should you decide to use it. Time limit is straightforward. You can set however many minutes you expect them to be able to use it.
Can I ask a question about the timer?
Absolutely.
Like as students see it?
Yes.
So I've had lots of students sort of not complain, but it makes them really anxious where the timer is placed. And then also apparently, I mean, I haven't actually gone through a whole test myself to test this out, but some students have said that little pop-up warnings come up.
Yes, they get a 5-minute warning.
Is there any way to disable that? I mean,
yes and no. The timer, there is now a button in the student interface. We'll see it in a second.
Okay.
We'll take a quiz here as a student. There is a button next to the timer that says hide timer. And they can click on that and the timer goes away.
Awesome.
And if they want to know where they are, they can go back and they can turn it back on again, then turn it off. But it's not sitting there running.
Right. Yeah,
which
for people with anxiety,
it's very legitimate it's a distraction. So this is very recent. It hasn't been there very long at all, but it is there now. As far as the periodic warnings, I know of no way to disable those.
Okay. I was talking with people at DSPS as well, and they also were.
Yeah, and they Canvas did hear that and listen to someone.
Okay.
And gave them the option to turn that timer off.
Okay.
And the student gets that option no matter what you do. You can't eliminate that option for it.
Perfect. Okay. As it should be.
As it should be.
Yeah.
You can, by default, the student can take the test once. But if there's some reason you want them to be able to take it more than one time, you can check allow multiple attempts. You can, if you just check allow multiple attempts, they can take it as many times as they want. If you want to limit the number of attempts, you click allowed attempts here, and then you enter the number that you want to give them. And you also get to decide which score goes into the grade book. The highest, lowest is not an option. The highest, the last attempt they did, or an average of all the attempts that they made. Default is the highest, as would only seem fair, but you may have reasons. The next block under details governs the type and the timing of feedback that the students get after they submit the quiz. Okay, nothing that we're going to talk about here happens before the student submits the quiz and can no longer get back into that attempt. If this is unchecked, all they get is a score. It tells them, well, you got 10 points out of 20, but it doesn't give them, they can't see their test attempt. They can't see the quiz, the test paper. They can't see the questions or anything if you turn that off. If you click that, let students see their quiz responses, they get to see the questions, all of them, and they'll see whether they got each question right or wrong. But they will not see the correct answers unless you decide to let them see those. You can also govern when they see it. Either, let's say it's multiple, you have multiple attempts set, like 2 attempts. It wouldn't show them this. If you check here, it won't show them the quiz paper, the quiz questions, and that information until after their last attempt. Or you can set it so they can only see it once after each attempt, but they can't go back and look at it in their grades tool later if you check this option. So you have some control over how often they can see this and when they can see it. You can also decide if the quiz is more of a learning experience than an assessment. You can let them see the correct answers. This is only after they submit, though. But this does give them access to the correct answers, so they could phone a friend, and so on. And you can govern when they can see the correct answers, either only after their last attempt, or you can set a date, presumably after the due date for the quiz, when they can see them, so they'll get the benefit of the feedback, but not in time to share the answers with anyone else who might be taking the test. And you can even have them, you can set a window during which they can see those correct answers, but after this date, the hide correct answers at date and time, they wouldn't be able to see them anymore. So you have a fair bit of flexibility in providing feedback. And of course, feedback delayed is feedback denied. The sooner they see how they did after the test is submitted, the more impact it's going to have on their learning experience. So,
Dave, I have a question about feedback
absolutely.
for essays.
Yes.
So I use a lot of essay questions sort of
Great.
in combination with multiple choice. I have them separately, so they
Right.
take them separately. And so I spend a lot of time writing comments under, so when you do the essay exam, under each essay, it says additional comments. And so that's where I write. So you grade it and then you put the feedback there. And I've had a lot of students tell me that they don't know, that they never saw the comments, or they don't know where to find
They don't know where to look for them, right?
Yeah, and so is there something like a tutorial or something that I can?
That's a very good question, and I have that on my. I don't have a tutorial specifically dealing with essay questions on tests and feedback.
Mhm.
And it's on my list. I added it to my list of tutorials.
Because I don't know what to tell them, and I've spent all this time writing for them, and I know it seems like some students can find it, and I don't know.
It's there, and they can see it by going into their grades tool and bringing up the test, and that of course presumes that you have checked this box, okay? But they can go back into their grades tool and they can find that. It is there, but it's not really obvious how to find that.
Could I use, sometimes there's that like test student,
Yes.
right? Can I take a test as test student?
Yes, you can.
Then as the teacher and then see for myself how to.
Precisely.
Okay. So I could do my own.
Test student is a real student. If you are in student view and you take a test, that test goes into the grade goes into the grade book.
Okay.
The test student has a row in the grade book.
Right.
And you can go into student view and you can go to the grades tool as the test student and you can see the test attempt and you can look.
So I can take the test as the test student and then I can grade it as the teacher. Okay. So that's probably my way into figuring out how to do that.
Let's see. I want to show you how to. There's
That's
one or two things about using the test student in that
okay.
particular manner that I want to show you, but I need to get through this test
That's
first, or I'll
totally
lose
fine.
what we've done to this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, but don't let me forget, please.
Okay.
All righty. After the feedback block here, we have this option to show one question at a time, which is supposed to increase test security, making it harder for the students to take a screenshot of the entire test or of a big chunk of it at one time and share that with their peers. I find this extremely aggravating as a test taker. If you select show one question at a time, you can also lock the question's answer after answering, so they can't go back and change the answer. And you might be doing them a favor. We know that 70% of the time when a student changes a multiple choice answer, they change it from right to wrong rather than the other way. But, oh, that bugs me. And I love to be able to scroll up and down in the test. And because, something in one question will remind me of the answer to another one. Or I'll suddenly realize I answered a question up above wrong because I've just had a chance to think about it subconsciously. And to not be able to go back or to have to go back one question at a time. Click, 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 click. Say it's a 100-question test. And I want to go back and look at question 2 and I'm on question 80. It's impractical. I don't know. I hate this option, but that's just my personal preference. You obviously have that. I don't really think it contributes that much to test security. The number one contributor, I should say, I think I forgot to mention this, to test security online is the time limit. Because they can have Google open. There's even a Chrome web browser plugin that they can install that works with Canvas that you'd never know they're using, and you can't prevent them, that puts a little link right next to each question that says Google it. And they don't even have to copy the question text and paste it into Google. They can click and they'll get the answer to the question, or they'll have a reasonable shot at it. You can't give them time for that kind of foolishness if you want to have a reasonably secure test. So you set your time limit to give them a reasonable but not excessive amount of time to review each question. Maybe a minute a multiple choice question or something. It depends on your subject matter and the nature of the questions. But if you don't give them enough time to Google everything, if they try it, they'll fail because they'll end up not answering half the questions at all. I got every one of the first 10 questions right, but I didn't even get to the last 10. And that's a self-correcting problem. Obviously, you can counsel them about that beforehand. Maybe even put that in the test instructions. You don't have enough time to Google these answers. You better know this. So this is your number one element, or the number one option you can take to ensure that the test is not subject to egregious academic dishonesty. Makes it pretty much impossible for them to do that. If they don't know the answer, they're not going to be able to Google it, or not effectively. They're not going to be able to have a real impact on their overall grade. Alrighty, let's see, quiz restrictions, and we don't use those things very much. If you were fortunate enough to have the students go and take the test in front of a proctor, you could require an access code, which you then supply to the proctor, so the student can't get into the quiz before they go and sit in front of the proctor. We don't often have that sort of option. Indeed, with online tests, you just have to accept that there is a certain degree of vulnerability to the test. And that's why we really recommend in an online environment that tests quizzes be relatively low stakes and more focused on learning than on an assessment. Things like homework assignments, writing assignments, creation of content type assignments, and so on are much more reliable indicators of student mastery than a multiple choice test, period, especially online. And finally, we get to the assign block here. By default, everyone will be able to access this test once you publish the test and the test becomes available. You can set a due date for the test just by clicking on this little calendar icon here, and we'll set it for into next week or into this week. Just click that, and there we go. The due date is displayed to the students. It goes into their calendars. And when they click on a link to the test, they'll see the due date before they start it. So they know when it's due, but the due date is not enforced. They can turn the test in late. They can take the test late if you just set a due date. Canvas will tell you they did so, but it won't stop them from taking it. If you want to prevent students from taking the test late, you also have to set an available until date, which is typically, though not universally, set to the same as the due date. So they can't even take the test after the due date has passed. You can also prevent them from taking the test before a certain time if you use an available from date and time. And you can adjust times as well as dates. By default, though, if you choose like April 9th, they'll have until 11:59 p.m., the end of day, on the due date. All right. A circumstance often arises, of course, where a particular student needs to take a test early or late for a legitimate reason. Early on learning management systems, you had to make an extra test and just let that one student have access to it. You had to copy the test and make another copy. You no longer have to do that in any learning management system. If you have someone who, say, needs to take the test a couple of days late because they're going on vacation or they're in the hospital or God knows what, you can add another assign block here. That's what this add button is for. And you can pick the student that you want to have this different set of dates. So I can select any number of students who might take this test late or early. And then I can give them their own due date, maybe a couple of days later, and their own display until date. So this student will have until the 11th, where everyone else, notice this assign block now says everyone else has to turn in by the 9th. So it's possible to accommodate individual student needs as far as due dates and availability dates are concerned in both classic quizzes and new quizzes. This is available in all quizzes.
Hi, Dave. This is
Yes.
Lena. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. Hi, I just want to ask you about that because lately I have a lot of high school students in one of my classes. And so let's say they're absent, okay? And so do you recommend me designing a different quiz because they have friends from their same high school probably
Yeah.
already haven't had an opportunity to look at the quiz already. So what would you recommend, designing a new quiz or having them shuffle around? Or I'm really perplexed about that.
Classic quizzes, as we're doing right now, your only real option is to make another quiz.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in that case, you just have to decide whether it's worth it or not, because that's an awful lot of work for you.
Mm-hmm.
In new quizzes, as we're going to see, there is an option to shuffle the questions,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't have here. It's probably the single best thing about new quizzes, as a matter of fact,
Uh-huh.
where it wouldn't matter as much because it would make it much harder for them to share or get information from their peers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's always a difficulty when you have people who get to take the test later.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so I normally designed a new one
yeah,
and go about it that way
that's
because
the
I
gold standard. There's no doubt about it.
mm-hmm.
Or, drop the lowest quiz, and if anybody misses
Yes,
one, that's just the one that they drop. That's another strategy. But
that's true.
but yeah, I wish I had a magic bullet for you. New
Thank
quizzes does
you.
give you that capability to shuffle questions, so
I
that makes it
I think mine are shuffled now. I don't know how. I did something to shuffle them.
not in classic quizzes that I'm aware of. You can shuffle answers, but not
I think
questions.
I've shuffled both. I'm gonna I'm gonna
I'd
test
love to
mine.
see how you did
I
that.
don't remember because I did it so long ago, but
I
and
hear
I
you.
I'm gonna
I
test it.
would dearly love to see that, indeed. Other than, you can go in and you can open up a test and you can edit the order in which questions occur
No, this is
manually.
each person.
But then, when you, with the option in new quizzes, it shuffles the questions for everybody. So each student gets the answers in a different order.
Mhm.
No, two students get get the questions, I'm sorry, in the same order. With that was the single most requested feature in new quizzes, I think. All right, once we're done
Thank you,
with,
Dave.
you bet, with setting the details, now of course we have the real work of the quiz, which is to add questions. Yes, Murray.
I just it shuffles them. I just went in twice and did preview, and I got two different question ones in the same quiz.
And
So I can email you.
this is a classic quiz, you sure?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. As far as I made it years ago. So yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to test that as well. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So before I save this, now I've set my details, but I don't have any questions. We need some questions for the test. In classic quizzes, of course, we do that by going to the questions tab here. And we're given 3 buttons to work with: new question group, and find questions. To simply type in a new question, we just click the new question button. And we get that same interface we had when we created a question in the question bank. We pick the question, and maybe I want to do an essay question, a question type, and maybe I want to do an essay question here. I get to put in a number of points. Essay question is probably going to be worth a little more. With an essay questions, of course, are real easy to write, and you pay on the other end when you have to grade them. But let's see, what have I got here? Oh, I got a chemistry question. We'll have to do. I'll just use that. We're going to have a mixture of subjects here. Describe the assumptions underlying the ideal gas law, which we're not going to go into right now. You can enter general comments here. You do have the full rich content editor here. So if you want to make a question more interesting than just text, if you want to include video or images or audio files or links to content outside of Canvas or whatever, you can put that in here. You can create in your question text or in your question any multimedia content that you want to use. So you might have them watch a video, and then answer a question about the video or something like that. So these questions can be really sophisticated, complex. But in this case, pretty much that's all there is. So I just click Update Question. I can't forget to do that. And that question becomes a part of the test. And then I can just keep adding new questions. Bing, 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 until I've put in the entire test. If I happen to have the test typed out in a Word document somewhere, I can copy and paste, as I did here. I copy and pasted that question text in. But if it's something like a multiple choice question, you can't just copy and paste the entire question. You have to copy and paste the question text and then each answer in turn. So it's kind of tedious, but it can be done. But what you really hope is that by some hook or crook or previous effort on your part or begging a colleague or whatever, you have some question banks. And there's two ways you can use question banks in creating classic quizzes. One is to use the Find Questions button. You click on that, and you see your question banks that you have available to this course. And you can select them one after another. Here's a U.S. History question bank. And you see all of the questions, 25 questions in that bank. I caution you, you know, question banks often have bad questions in them, questions that are flat out wrong or misleading or ambiguous. You know, it's a good idea to vet these before using them, but we can pick any particular question we like. But we get a limited amount of information about each question, so it can be a little hard to see them. Let's see. And we'll just pick that looks like a multiple choice question, so I'll pick that one. And I can pick any number of questions I like out of this bank. And then scroll to the bottom, and there's an Add Questions button. And now I get two questions real easy. And at this point, of course, I can click this button here, or this box here that says Show Question Details, and I can check them out and make sure they look reasonable. And now I can continue. And I could select questions from another question bank. And I can build the test that way. Everyone who takes this quiz, however, will of course get all three of these questions. They'll all see these three questions. So these are picked for everyone. So when you pick Find Question, the Find Question button, you're selecting questions specifically based on your judgment, and you're presenting them to everyone who takes the test. The other option that you have, the third button, New Question Group, allows you to have Canvas pick the questions for you at random. If you select and you can mix questions that you've typed in and that you have selected from question banks and that you have Canvas select for you. You can mix all of those in the same test. So I'm going to do that here by creating what's called a question group. I have to give it a name that's unique to this test. So I'm just going to call it Group 1. Doesn't mean you can't use the name Group 1 in another test, but this test can only have one question group labeled Group 1. And I have to tell Canvas which question bank I want it to pull these questions from. I do that by click Link to a question bank, and I get a list of all my question banks. Let's say I'm going to use this U.S. History Quiz Chapter 1 question bank. So I select the bank, and Canvas knows where to pull the questions. Then I have to tell Canvas how many questions to pull for each student. And typically, there were 25 questions in that bank. I wouldn't tell it to pick all 25. I might as well just, that's the same thing as using the find question button and selecting them all. So I would usually not pick more than half the questions in the bank, maybe 10 questions. Well, let's keep this small. Let's just have it pick 2 questions. I can't individually set question values like I can on the ones that I enter or that I select from the question bank that everybody's going to get. I can set exact point values for those, but in a question group, all the questions have to have the same value, and you get to specify what the value is per question. But you can't give more credit for one question than another. So typically you want to make sure, if you possibly can, that your question banks have questions that are all of similar value. Like, you don't really want to mix, as is the case in some of these, with essay questions with multiple choice questions and so on in the same bank if you can avoid it. Because if you're going to be using question groups, because people are going to get different mixes of question types, and some people are going to get unlucky. Somebody may get 3 essay questions and someone else none. So it's not really fair. That's a limitation in Canvas, unfortunately. All right, but once you've made these selections, you just create the group, and that's going to be 2 more questions. So each student, in this case, is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. And 2 of those questions are going to be picked at random from that question bank. So this is another way to enhance test security. Because if you create all or part of the test randomly like this, no 2 students are going to get the same test. And that just occurred to me, Marie. Were you using question groups in that test?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes, I typically do.
Okay, that's the answer to that then. And that points out that there is a workaround, a hack that you can use with classic quizzes to get a randomized test for each student. What you have to do is put all of the questions that you want to use in a test in a question bank.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what
And
I
then
do.
you create a question group and select all of the questions in the question group. Or if there's 25 questions in the group, in the bank, you create a question group that pulls 25 questions from that bank, and it does randomize them then.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it. I feel better now.
It's done.
So that is a hack that you can use. Fortunately, that process is a lot simpler in new quizzes. You just check a box and say, I want shuffle questions, and you get them without having to go through all this. All right, but this is not that big a deal, though. So we've got the quiz created. We save and publish, and the quiz is, and we of course need to put a link to it that allows the students to access it. We have to create a module, which I don't have in here yet. Create a module. We just call this module 1. And we have to put a link to this quiz into the module. We only got the one quiz. Oh no, I've got Classic Quiz 1. There we go. This is the one I've just created. So that gives the students the capability to access that quiz as long as I publish the module. So now I can go in as my test student. If I want to check this test, which is a very good idea, I can go to Student View, I can click on the quiz, the link to the quiz. I'll see the instructions. I'll see the due date, how many points are on the quiz, lots of information about the test, and I can see this before I decide to take the quiz. So the student can go in at any time and get this much information about the quiz. Unless you set a display until, not a display until date, a display, what's the word I'm looking for? You can prevent the students from accessing the test before a certain date if you set the availability date to earlier, display availability. But otherwise, the student will be able to see this. But when they're ready to take the quiz, obviously, they just click Take the Quiz. And let's see, describe the, and this, I have that Chrome extension running here. Shows you how easy this is. I just click that. Bada bing. I know that's a little, and we found out about this Chrome extension from a student. Yeah, that makes it a little too easy, doesn't it? So, all right, here's my rich content editor. I just paste that in. I'm done with that question. And unfortunately, I'm not up on West African empires, so I'm going to have to tree this.
Or you can Google it.
Or I could Google it. Yeah, we don't have time to. European feudal was an independent. I am, in the interest of time, just going to Google this. The African slave trade was probably Portugal. All right. And those last two questions were picked at random just for me. No other, it would be very unusual for another student to get those same question 4 and 5. And then I submit the quiz. As long as you don't reset the student when you leave, that quiz goes into the grade book, the submission goes into the grade book and stays there. If I just leave student view without resetting the student, that's what I wanted to show earlier. Now, I'm the teacher. I can go into the grade book. I've got just the one column in the grade book at this point, or the one, come on. There's Classic Quiz 1. And there's the submission. If I had had nothing but objective questions in the quiz, there'd be a number here. Canvas grades that for you. However, there were essay questions there. So in order to grade those, I have to click on the submission icon, click on the right arrow, and go to the speed grader and pull the test up in the speed grader for this student. And this is my test student, so this is how I check out a test and make sure everything's working right. This is the gold standard for making sure a test is ready for prime time. So the first question was an essay question. I look at it. Yeah, that's really pretty good. That's worth 10 points. Whoever put that on the web is pretty good. But I missed question 2. They missed question 2. Question 3 is graded. Question 4, I missed. Question 5, I got one right. Even a blind hog can find an acorn every now and then. And I can add fudge points if I want to, everybody should have, I'm going to give everybody a couple of points extra credit because that third question was awful. Something like that. And then I get to update the score, and now there's a grade of 13. The essay question points are added in, and that shows up in the grade book. So that's how you grade essay questions in classic quizzes. And pretty much the same way in new quizzes as well. All right, so let's see if I got through everything I needed to do on classic quizzes. Oops, wrong.
Hi, Dave. This is Dana
Yes.
again. Sorry to interrupt, but
Not at all.
I think you went a little for me. If it would be possible, because I normally create the quizzes in the module, but
Right.
you connect it, and I always have a hard time doing it separately, like on the quizzes. How did you link that very quick?
Oh, how did I link that quiz
Yes,
into the
sorry. I
module?
should have stopped you when you were doing it.
Right, not at all, not at all. Let's see, bring Canvas back up. Okay, if we go back to the modules, indeed, you can always create a quiz from within the module just by clicking the Add Item button
Yes, that's
and
how I do it.
select Quiz.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes you to the quiz creation screen.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do it using the Quizzes tool,
Mm-hmm.
if you use the Add Quiz button in the Quizzes tool, when you select Quiz, you'll see any existing quizzes.
Oh, okay.
So instead of clicking Create Quiz, you can select an existing quiz.
Oh, okay.
And then Add Item,
Oh,
and that
okay.
puts that quiz in. That's how you
Oh,
put a
okay.
quiz that's already created
Oh, okay.
into a module.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if I've covered everything on classic quizzes. I think I have. Adding questions manually, explicit questions, randomly from question banks. Bingo. That's about everything there is. Managing classic quizzes. Deploying quizzes to students. Well, we've seen how to do that. We put a link to the quiz into a module, and we make sure that the quiz is published, and that we haven't set an availability date that hasn't been reached yet. Let's say you have DSPS students, which we all will from time to time. How do you give extra time on a quiz to a student, on a classic quiz? Well, these situations arise all the time, but Canvas has a means for you to do that without having to create a separate quiz with different time limits. You just pull up the quiz creation screen. You don't even have to edit the quiz to do this. You have over here on the right a moderate button. Once the quiz is created and published, you'll see this moderate the quiz button. You click that, you get a list of all your students. And let's say student 2 has a contract, says they get from DSPS, says they get time and a half on all quizzes. This quiz, I think, was 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes. So for test student 2, I can click this little pencil icon, which is universal for edit. And perhaps this person gets extra attempts. I've seen that too. So you could give an extra attempt. So that gives a student a total of 2. Well, everybody already gets 2. So I could give them a third by just adding an attempt here. And on every attempt, I can give them an extra 5 minutes, which gives them time and a half. That's an extra 5 minutes. And then save that, and that goes into the list here under Moderate Quiz, and I can see whom I've given that to. So that happens automatically, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to make an extra quiz and change the time limit or anything like that, or give everyone, this is a very simple way to do that. Okay, that's not terribly complex, but thank goodness it's a mess without it. The earliest learning management systems didn't have these kind of accommodations, and they were a mess to deal with. We've taken a quiz, we've seen how to grade it. So, we're ready to talk about new quizzes. Now, most everything I've said about classic quizzes goes for new quizzes. They have the same basic capabilities and so on. We will eventually all have to use them. But for now, you can use both classic and new quizzes in the same course if you wish. They do offer significant improvements, but they're not quite ready to completely replace classic quizzes yet. So they've given us a little bit of extra time. We've got till the summer of 2024 before we'll have to stop using classic quizzes, period. And we will, of course, give you lots of warning on that, and we'll hit, as we get nearer to the time when we have to switch over to new quizzes, we'll be doing new quizzes seminars every month or more often, so that everybody has a chance to. This is not going to be sprung on you, and you're going to have lots of chances to learn to use new quizzes. But the best thing to do, of course, is maybe to try one now and just see how it works for yourself. We've got a classic quizzes feature comparison, which I can bring up here and share with you. Okay. Red indicates something we're losing. Right now, at least, new quizzes don't integrate with proctoring software. So if you're using Proctorio or something like that, I don't know if anybody at the district still is or not. And there's been a lot of negative feeling about that, but about using it. But they don't work yet with Proctorio and things like that. Question banks are still a problem, and I'm going to show you, or give you a link to a tutorial if we run out of time, on how to convert question banks in classic quizzes to what are called item banks, which are the same thing, test banks, in new quizzes. But they don't automatically. You can't use a question bank from a classic quizzes question bank in new quizzes. New features that are nice are in green here. It is possible to print a test for the student to take very easily. That's hard to do with classic quizzes. With new quizzes, it's easy. You get to do that. They can't print it. Though there is a Chrome extension that will allow them to print classic quizzes. And you can print an answer key. You can, they can't. So that's a nice thing that you didn't have in classic quizzes. The biggest single thing we'll lose when we go to new quizzes is the ability to create surveys. Classic or new quizzes don't offer surveys, period. They just took it out. We can search good things, new things. We can search item banks for a particular type of question. We can search for item banks, and we can sort item banks. We can't do that with any of those things with question banks in the classic quizzes. Something that they will correct, but have not done yet, is that when you when you create new quizzes and when your students answer essay questions on new quizzes, they get the old rich content editor interface that we used about 2 years ago and previous. They don't get the new rich content editor, which we're all used to by now, because they haven't integrated that with new quizzes yet. That is a bad thing. But if you're not doing a lot of essay questions, that's not going to be an issue. There are new question types, and this is another really nice thing about new quizzes. There are new question types, including categorization questions, stimulus questions, ordering questions, and hotspot questions that we don't have in classic quizzes. And you have all of the same old question types that you had in classic quizzes as well. So you get 4 really new, neat question types, and I'm going to show you a question of each of those types. And here's the one that everybody loves that we've already talked about. You can shuffle questions within a test by just checking a box rather than having to go through the making a group and selecting the entire group and so on. And you can shuffle answers per question. So if you don't want to shuffle the answers on some questions but shuffle them on others, you can now do that in new quizzes. And when you're moderating quizzes, let's say you have 2 or 3 DSPS students in your class. You can use that moderation trick that I showed you in classic quizzes, but you have to redo that for every different test. So if you give 10 tests in the course, you got to go into all 10 tests and set the moderation for those DSPS students so they get extra time. New quizzes allows you to automatically add half again as much time or twice as much time to all of the tests for a subset of students at one time with one operation. So that saves a lot of time. And there are 2 of the new question types that are a little bit problematic. Ordering questions and categorization questions don't yet allow partial credit, so the student either gets it exactly right or they get no credit. And with categorization questions especially, that's kind of harsh. But that will be fixed before we have to use. The vast majority of these red lines will be fixed before we're forced to use new quizzes. But none of them are really showstoppers in using new quizzes. So let's take a quick trip. We've got 18 minutes left. Let's take a quick trip through new quizzes. If you want to use new quizzes right away, you can migrate your classic quizzes to new quizzes and have all of these new properties and things like that at any time. And it's dirt simple. All you have to do if I go to quizzes, my list of quizzes here, these 2 quizzes that I have so far are both classic quizzes. I'll show you how I know that here in a second. If I want a new quiz instead of classic quiz 1, but for any of this to work, I have to enable new quizzes in my course. That you can do at any time by going to the settings link in the course menu. And you have a series of tabs up here at the top of your settings window, and one of those says feature options. If you select feature options, you'll find new quizzes as one of the new things that you can use, and you just click this button right here and you can select enabled or disabled. So all you have to do is click that button and click enabled, and that red X will turn into a green circle with a check mark in it, and you now have access to new quizzes in your course. That's all it takes. So if I have already done that, and I have a classic quiz that I want to create or migrate into a new quiz, I just go to the context menu at the right hand end of the detail line for that quiz, and there's an option to migrate that quiz. I select that option. Come on, there we go. All right, now if I go back, come on. It's being a little ticky for me here. Why is that doing that? Let's see. There we go. Migrate. You get this migration and project progress button. And within a few seconds, I now have a Classic Quiz 1, but that ain't a Classic Quiz anymore. And I can tell immediately that that's the case by looking at the little icon associated with it. Classic quizzes have an outline of a little rocket ship. New quizzes have the little rocket ship icon filled in. So this is a new quiz. So it would probably behoove me to, oh, come on. My interface is acting up because I have this. I'll probably want to edit that. There we go. That's the wrong one. Sorry. Classic Quiz 1 is no longer a classic quiz. It is now a new quiz. So I want to remind myself of that. And save it. Okay. How do you create classic quizzes? Well, or new quizzes, excuse me. Well, when you create a quiz in your course, if you have enabled new quizzes, you're asked, do I want a classic quiz or a new quiz? Well, I'll take a new quiz here. And submit. You get a different options screen right away. Instead of the little tab that says details and questions, you just get this options screen right off the bat. We'll call it New Quiz 2. You have something you've never had with a quiz before here. This is another nice new feature of new quizzes. You get to set a number of points, the possible points for the quiz. In the case of a classic quiz, the possible points for a classic quiz is just the sum of the points for each question. They're the sum of the points that each question is worth. So if you want a quiz to be worth 20 points, you have to be very careful in how you choose the individual point values for the questions within that quiz. You may have to choose fractional point values to get the exact number of possible points for the quiz that you want so that it fits into your grading scheme properly. With new quizzes, you can just say, I want this quiz to be worth 20 points. You still get to pick the point values for your individual questions in new quizzes, but Canvas, before Canvas puts a grade in the grade book, it's going to do a computation for you. Let's say your individual point values in the new quiz don't add up to 20. It's going to look at the number of questions, look at the questions the student got right. It's going to look at the number of points the student earned. It's going to take a percentage of the sum of the question values, and then it's going to take that percentage of 20 points. So you can much more easily fit new quizzes into your grading scheme by just selecting the possible point value that the quiz can have. And Canvas will do all the computation for you to interpolate that into, so that the student gets an appropriate portion of those 20 points based upon how many questions they got right, how many points they earned in the quiz. But it converts the one to the other using a percentage. So it's really cute. That's another really nice thing about this. It makes setting up your grading scheme a lot easier. Classic quizzes have always been a stumbling block in that regard. So if you have a series of tests of comparable value, like maybe three major tests, and you want them all to have the same impact on the um, final grade, you can set all three to have the same number of possible points, but you don't have to have the same number of questions and the same number of question points in each test. It gives you a lot of freedom in designing tests that you never had before. Let's see. There's nothing to change here. This is, notice it won't even let me try to change something there. This Canvas sort of treats new quizzes kind of like assignments, more like assignments than tests in the grading. Then we have the assign block, and the same process holds true here. This is identical to what you do in classic quizzes. So now, in order to add questions, instead of clicking on a questions tab up at the top here, we click this highlighted build button down here, which is in color, so we notice it. It's hard to miss. We click on that. And now we have the option to create quizzes, or to questions, excuse me. Instead of having 3 buttons as we had before, we have a little blue circle with a plus sign in it. To make our first question, we just click on that, and we get to pick the question type that we want. Like true, false. Type in or paste in our question text. Tell Canvas which answer, whether it's true or false. New Quizzes also offers an on-screen calculator, which you can display question by question, or universally if you wish. Not particularly useful in this case, but this can ensure that everybody has a calculator in case there's some computation involved. And you can set a point value, and you can click done, and that question, question stem. Oh, I didn't add the question. Thought I did. Oh, that's the name of the question. I'm sorry I put that in the wrong place. Okay, and done. And there's my first question. If I want to pull questions from an item bank, if I have item banks that I have converted into new quiz format, I can click this item banks button here. And because I am in as me, I have access to some item banks that I've already created. I'm going to click on one of those, and I can pick questions from an item bank, very similarly to how I did with the and I get a little circle around the thing, and that tells me it's selected. And I can then add them to the test. Come on. Sorry, this interface is getting a little... And that happens instantly. And there are those questions I just added from the question bank. They just show up, and there's no add the questions button, things like that. You just click on them, and they go right into the quiz. You can also create question groups here in much the same way by clicking this all or random button here. That allows you to create a question group, and you just
North Coast Repertory Theater. Melody, how may I assist you?
Hi, how are you? Well, I'm trying to get tickets, but I'm trying to get
Thought I'd heard something there. Just a second. Let me fix that. Okay, everybody's muted, but you can unmute yourselves. All right. I can edit this sample, this group here. And I can either use all questions or I can randomly select questions and indicate how many questions I want and how many points per question. And click done. So that's how we do a question group in New Quizzes. Same result, different interface. But it's just as quick, it's even easier and quicker. Once I have my questions, I have a settings button that gives me more test options than I had before. Here's the one that allows me to shuffle questions universally. That's the nice new feature here. I can also shuffle answers. I can do one question at a time. I can require an access code. I can set a time limit in hours and minutes now instead of just in minutes. I can allow the calculator, on-screen calculator, in all questions if I like, universally. I can set multiple attempts, and I can govern. I have a slightly different set of options to govern what students can see after they submit, but it's basically similar to what we had with classic quizzes. I have more extensive moderation capabilities. I moderate a student's time and attempt number by just clicking on the moderate button, and I can give additional attempts and make time adjustments. Like I can remove time limit entirely for this student. In some cases that's required. Or I can give additional time in hours and minutes for that student. And that's all I need to do there, and that automatically saves for test student 2. But if test student 2 gets extra time on every test, I can click the little pencil icon next to their name, and I will be able to give them additional time, remove the time limit, or here's the one that really makes it useful. I can use a time limit multiplier. So I can give, if the student is worth or is allowed time and a half, I can give them a 1.5 multiplier. If they do double time, I can make it 2.0 and so on. And that covers every exam in the course, so it can save you a considerable amount of setup time and eliminates mistakes, which is the real danger here. Of course, you forget to give that student an extra time and be some time before you hear the end of it. So better moderation and better question types. And I'm just running out of time on that. Let me very quickly show you each of the new question types. They're very simple to create. I have another course here where I have some of those already added. Go to quizzes. This is a categorization question. If I go to build, I'll be able to see the question. All right, place the following composers in the appropriate musical period. So I created three musical time periods and gave a list of 6, 9, 10 composers that fit into one of these periods, and one composer that didn't fit into any of them. and the students have to drag the names of the composers into the appropriate square or rectangle. That's a categorization question. You can come up with many, many, many ideas on that. If I return to, and you use that return button in the new quizzes interface a lot. A hotspot question allows you, if I go to build, to take a picture and ask a question about the picture and have the student pick something out of the picture to answer the question. Like here's the 1927 Solvay conference photo. And the question is, click on the person in this photograph who earned 2 Nobel Prizes in science. And there's only one of them. And she's easy to pick out because she's the only woman. Marie Curie, the only person at that time who had earned 2 Nobel Prizes in science, and is one of the very few people who ever did it. There are like 2 other people who have earned 2 Nobel Prizes, and one of them earned a Peace Prize in addition to a science prize, Linus Pauling. So the student just clicks on the right spot in the picture to get it right, or wrong, or the wrong place and get it wrong. So hotspot questions are really cute. I'm particularly fond of that one. Ordering questions. Go to build to see it. List these U.S. presidents in chronological order by date of election. And then it presents them to them in random order. When you create the question, you put the presidents in, you put the items in the right order, and then they get to drag these items up and down into what they believe to be the correct order. And finally, the stimulus question is something we could fake, sort of, in classic quizzes. But it allows you to provide a so-called stimulus, some information that the students need to answer a group of questions that follow. Like in this case, I've said the following 3 questions can be answered by referring to the provided periodic table. I give them a periodic table of the elements, and then 3 questions follow, which are the that have to do with the periodic table. And like I say, we could do this in classic quizzes by using a text no question block followed by a number of questions, but this makes it a little bit easier to create and quicker to create. So those are your 4 new question types. The main remaining issue that I don't have time to cover in detail is how to get item banks from question banks, because right now we don't have no item banks. You can't get an item bank for new quizzes, probably, from your publisher. You're going to get a classic question bank. How do you get that into new quizzes to be able to use it there? There is a process. It is a process. It's one that I think would not be terribly useful to demonstrate live, because you need to go through the process. You need to see the process demonstrated a few times. We have a tutorial for that on our Open On Demand site called Migrating Classic Quizzes and Question Banks to New Quizzes. It's a 10-minute tutorial, and you can watch it a couple of times until you get comfortable with migrating question banks to item banks, to new quizzes item banks. You can access all of this stuff from a new quizzes summary tutorial page, which pops up in our spinner here at the front on the home page. We have a whole series of tutorials showing you everything I've just shown you about new quizzes and more, on how to activate new quizzes, create new quizzes, migrate quizzes and question banks, and how to create stimulus questions, ordering questions, hotspot questions, and categorization questions. All of that is covered in this. All you have to do to get to the easiest way to get to this in the Open On Demand site, which is accessed at, make sure everybody has that. There it is in the chat tool, sdccdolvid.org. You can just click on that link and bookmark it later. That'll take you to this home page. On searches, you just type new quizzes. And you probably helps if you spell new right. One more try. There we go. Press enter. And this is the one that you want with the little colored rocket ship using the new quizzes testing engine. Here's a seminar that I did on this same thing live. And here are all those different tutorials that I showed you. But this has all of those. The using new quizzes in Canvas lists all of those tutorials. And you can just work your way through them. So that's everything you'll need to get started in new quizzes, should you choose to do so at any time. And thank you. We had some great questions during the middle of the thing, so that pushed us 7 minutes over, but I was very happy to answer those at the time, so we're more or less on time. And we're done. I'm done. I'm certainly willing to answer any other questions you have about this or any other topic. I would like to take questions about testing first. If there's anything you wanted to ask and didn't get to ask during the presentation, please feel free. Let's take those first. Just jump right in. The first person to unmute and speak gets to start. Marie, you're unmuted anyway.
I am. My last question is sort of specific, and it's sort of about, I guess, about grading more than testing, but that's sort of the same thing.
Well, it has something to do with that, yeah.
Right. So I just gave an exam recently, and it was another one that was like 2 parts. There was like a multiple choice and an
Right.
essay. And so I finished grading the essay part. And then when I looked, I usually look at like the quiz stats, right? And so when I looked at that, it said that the lowest score was a 0.
I saw that.
Right.
And I went in and looked at your quiz,
Yeah.
and I have no idea why it's doing
Okay.
that. Because it doesn't do that every time.
No, because the co-part, like the multiple choice, it was normal. Like and the
Yeah.
students took it on the same day. It was the same,
No, I'm sorry. I don't know why that happened. It doesn't normally happen.
Okay.
That did skew your, and I think I sent you, I hope I replied to you on that.
You did, but you're busy. That's okay.
It did skew your average by about 3 points.
Yeah.
And I could see no reason why it should.
Mm-hmm.
Or why it showed one, because clearly there was no student who had taken the test who got a 0 on it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that was some sort of Canvas glitch.
Just a weird one.
And I'm still I did some research on that and couldn't find anybody else complaining about that. So it must be a very rare occurrence. I just don't, it's something some student did triggered that
Okay.
inadvertently.
Okay.
And we may never know why.
Right. Okay.
But I wouldn't expect, it's something else to check for, obviously, in
Right.
your
And
test.
it doesn't really matter. I just don't like students to think that,
Well, no, it shouldn't happen. If it started happening on a regular basis, we'd have to get Canvas involved and see what the heck was going on. So if it happens again, please let me know.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
That's I tried to make it happen. I tried to be the dummy student, the iconic dummy student, but I couldn't get it to happen.
Okay,
So I don't know.
thanks.
You bet. Anyone else have a question on testing?
Hi, Dave. It's Lena.
Lena.
I was wondering, I liked how you had that picture there on the quiz.
Oh,
With
the
the Nobel
periodic
Prize.
table.
Yeah, no, the Nobel Prize. When I can
Oh, yeah.
definitely use those for my class.
Mm-hmm.
How did you
How do
get
you
that in
create
there?
those?
Yes.
Sure. Since I'm happy to spend the time now, I just didn't want to make everybody wait. But yeah, let's make a hotspot question. We'll go to quiz. Not this one, since that's one that's specific. Let's go to this new quiz here. And let's build. Got to get used to hitting that build button to get into the being able to add questions. And also change settings and moderate and so on. Everything happens from the build screen. All right, let's add a hotspot question. We'll add questions to new quizzes by clicking the little blue circles with the plus signs. If I want the question to go at the end, I click the last circle. If I want it inserted in the middle of the test, I click one of the circles in the middle. But we'll click that one. And let's do a hotspot question. So it's a pretty logical interface. We have to wait for it for a second. Okay, there we go. We have our hotspot. And I'm not going to title it. It does warn you that hotspot questions are not accessible to students requiring keyboard-only access or screen readers. So you can't use this if you have a blind student in your class. That's pretty obvious.
Oh, okay.
Or a student who is whose motor skills do not allow them to use a keyboard or a mouse. I'm sorry, a mouse. Who can use a keyboard perhaps with an assistive device, but can't use a mouse. So you got to be a little careful about using this question type. You got to know your students. But now we add the question stem it's talking about is just the top is the text of the question. Let's see. Something I know I can find. Which of the following signers of the Constitution? I was in history mode today. I really wanted to, when I was in the middle of graduate school, I wanted to switch from chemistry to history because I love history. But the professor I was talking to in the history department took me aside and said, "Son, we're producing a product for which there is no market." Yes, sir. Gotcha. Which of the following signers of the Constitution is Benjamin Franklin? Okay, now I need an image. I can browse for the image, but that requires that I have it on my local hard drive. So how do I find such an image? Well, Google has an image search, which you may or may not have used before. If you just go to the Google homepage, there's this images button in the upper right. And I can just type signers of the Constitution. I can type any, I can find any image online that I need just about.
Wow, thank you, Dave. I never used that.
How about that one?
Uh-huh.
We'll take that one. All I have to do is right click or command click on a Mac on the image and select Save Image As. I can put that in my pictures library or wherever I want to on my hard drive. And I'm just gonna call it Signers of the Constitution. I can't seem to type the My mother told me to learn how to type. All right. So now I have that on my hard drive. Now I can go to, oops, I can go to my image box here, and I browse for the image I need, and I have that in my pictures folder. I just type a little bit of the name and it pops it up, the signers of the Constitution. Open. And there it is.
Wow.
Now I have to put in the hotspot. And let's see, can I make this bigger? Expand image. There we go. Well, that didn't help much, did it? Make it a little bigger that way. All right, there's old Ben right there without his kite. Okay. I can make the hotspot rectangular, circular, or a pin. The rectangular one is the one that you probably want. That's safer. So I just click there on a square, and I just draw in a rectangle that includes just Ben. And I say I'm done. I don't need a calculator for that one, so I'm done again. All right, and there's that question. I'm not going to worry about any settings or anything like that. I'm just going to return one step back. Come on. There we go. I've added that question to the test. Oh, no, it didn't return. Come on. There we go. Now, let's see. I'm going to check that to make sure that I got that one in there. Yep, there it is. So that's now in the quiz. I just got that by hitting return and added it to the existing quiz. If this were a brand new quiz, it would have asked me to save and publish the quiz. But this one was already saved and published. I was just editing it. So there it is. Now if I return and I go to Student View, and that was this one, go into that quiz. In order to, I see I've got my time limit and so on. Now I can begin. Loads the quiz. And I just scroll down to that question, he said. Huh. Uh-oh, did I pick the wrong? Oh, there it is. I put it in the middle, apparently. And here's and I just go and I just click where I think the right person is. It puts a little dot there. And then I submit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've only answered the one question. But there we go. And here's the results for that test student's attempt. And you got it right. So that's how a hotspot question.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really cool.
Yeah, I love those. It
Uh-huh.
really, and you can use it for things like laboratory practical exams. If you're teaching in science, you know, you can have a dissected fetal pig sitting there, and you can have pins, you know, a red pin in the in the stomach and a green pin in the heart and things like that. And you can say, or you can just have him laid out there, and you say, okay, click on the heart or whatever. And then, so it's it gives you a lot of extra. Those new question types really give you some extra capability in terms of testing.
Uh-huh.
In new quizzes. So I strongly encourage like I said, they work great. They're very reliable. And I think the students, particularly the hotspot questions, the students will love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to that one's very hard to cheat on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to describe that to someone over the phone, and it's a very useful question type.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dave.
You are
Have a
certainly
nice
welcome.
evening. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. I've learned a
I'll look
lot.
forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Okay, does anybody have another question about anything that they'd like to ask that I might be able to help with?
I don't. Thank you, Dave, so much.
Thanks so much for coming, and thanks for all the great questions.
Great. Have a
It's
great night.
always a pleasure to have you. And Kathleen, anything I can help with? Kathy. Nope, still muted. Well, not hearing. I will wish you a wonderful afternoon, evening, and hope to see everybody again soon. Take care.